I'll call this meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order, please. Today is March the 14th, 2019. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Rivers.
Here.
Supervisor Schoolcraft.
Here.
Supervisor Atkins.
Here.
Supervisor Bates.
Here.
Supervisor Castle.
Here.
Supervisor, or Vice Chair Robbins.
Here.
And Chair Kilgore
Here.
is on the phone. Okay, Supervisor Lunsford is not here tonight.
Okay.
May be running late, or he may not be here due to illness.
Okay. It happens. If all would stand for the prayer. Bob, would you say the prayer, please?
Let's all bow and we'll pray together. Gracious Lord, we are here this evening just because of your grace and your mercy and your goodness to us. And we thank you for that, Lord, every day. And we're grateful to you for every good blessing that comes from you. We thank you, Lord, that you have allowed us to come together and serve your people in a community way and for the betterment of your people. And we just ask, Lord, that you be with us this evening, and everything that we do and say will be pleasing to you in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen. John, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as presented, Mr. Chairman, if there are no corrections.
Have a motion, second?
Second.
Have a second, any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions for the agenda tonight?
We have talked about pulling one item from the consent agenda that
Okay. We're going to pull the appropriations for the fourth quarter from the agenda. That does not mean that it's pulled from tonight's packet. We will just simply move it down to, probably down to old business. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have anything from roads and highways? Does anybody have any remarks or anything that they want to bring before the board? From the board?
Just, if I may just throw this out, and I know that you're all hearing it, we've got slides and holes washed out and creek banks that's given away and all that kind of thing. And our roads are been suffering havoc, and we just appreciate the patience of the citizens till we can get around and get them propped up again.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a lot of washouts and probably get a little bit more rain tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to echo what Mr. Atkins said, and I want to say my appreciations to BDOT for what they have done and what they are doing. It's been a lot of work. We have a lot of potholes that's been developed out there, so as soon as they can, I would like for them to get on to repairing the potholes. And then one concern I have is near our Eastone Gap Convenience Center. As we're leaving the convenience center going toward Eastone, toward the railroad track, the edge of the road is crumbling and tearing up real bad. It's been doing that since last fall. So if they could take a look at that particular area of the highway there from Big Stone to Eastone, near the convenience center, I would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Anyone else? Public hearings, do we have any, we have no, yeah, we do. No, we don't have any public hearings tonight. And presentations, Davenport and Company. I think we have a gentleman here who's going to give us a look at some of our finances. Introduce yourself and tell where you're from, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is David Rose, and I'm the representative from Davenport. I've had the good fortune of being in front of Wise County's board over the years, and what I'd like to do tonight is to summarize some of the highlights of a comprehensive financial review that we did on behalf of the county, working with your very able staff over the last several months. So with that said, you have a summary here of some of what I think are the most pertinent parts. Anyone would like the full report, we certainly can provide that to you. It's almost 100 pages, so this is a synopsis of some of those key points. If I could spend the next few minutes with your pleasure. That said, let me see if I can work this. I'll let you, if you want to try to do that, that's fine. Okay. Hopefully everybody up there can see. You've got the exact copy of that right in front of you. But our goals and objectives tonight with this report was to give you certain key information to help with the 2020 budget process. That said, we wanted to make sure that anything we said was going to continue to provide the county with strong investment grade ratings. You enjoy a AA rating, which is one category away from the highest possible rating of AAA. You earned that several years ago. You've maintained that through the years, and we want to talk about some of the pressures that are on you through no fault of your own. And in fact, to the contrary, you've actually done a very, very good job as leaders of this county in maintaining very strong reserves. But they're under pressure by virtue of particularly the drop in the coal severance monies. And we're going to show some of that and give it to you visually as well as numerically. In addition, I want to talk a little bit about the old school funding that you did. We have what's called the literary loan anticipation notes. We have a choice as to what to do with those. That was the money that we're waiting on from the Commonwealth Department of Education, and think we'll probably see those monies come in the next couple of years, perhaps sooner. We'll know with certainty once the veto session is over by the governor and the legislature. And then finally, we've incorporated into your cash flows roughly $10 million of what we'll call county-related projects. We realize there are any number of things that all counties are facing, yours as well, and so we factored that into a comprehensive look at the county. Okay. So I alluded to a couple of moments ago some key observations, and we tried to boil down many of them right here into what is perhaps the most important and most critical drivers of those observations, particularly as it relates to getting into the next budget. And the first one, as I alluded to, is that unexpected loss of the coal severance monies. I think all of us, when we did the work several years ago, knew that the coal severance dollars would be less than they were at their high point, but did not expect them to come down roughly 80 to 90% from that high point in just the last several years. That has been a particularly difficult number. You are not alone, of course. Dickinson and Tazewell and others that are in the coal mining counties are seeing the same thing. The second thing is making sure that we have a sustainable plan with regard to the debt service that's going to go from roughly 4.3 million to 6.3 million over the next several years. That's all been planned, but again, it's still some considerable dollars that have to be set aside. And so the combination of the extraordinary loss of coal severance dollars coupled with the increase in just the overall unfunded mandates that the Richmond has put on you, what we are looking at right now is, and I use the word the equivalent, that's the key word here, but if we were to look at it on the basis of just the real estate tax alone, that's an equivalent impact of roughly 7 pennies. And that is what would be necessary to make a sustainable, in effect, impact on taking care of the fact that the coal severance dollars are down, coupled with taking care of all your other needs, plus moving and taking care of on a one-time basis, meeting the increases of the debt service over the next several years. So that's the equivalent of 7 pennies. Then the fourth bullet point there is when we add in that roughly $10 million of what would be debt service to cover that 10 million, that adds another equivalent of 2 pennies. So we're up to roughly 9 pennies on the real estate rate if that were to be the sole approach that was to be taken. So the other point we want to make, and one of the reasons why it's not worse than this, is that we actually have, as we've talked about, a very strong unassigned fund balance, rainy day fund. That's separate from the coal severance dollars, separate from other things. And again, you as a board made that happen a number of years ago, and that is very, very important to what I'm going to talk about, which is the last thing, which is a strategic pathway to not have to use the equivalent of 9 pennies, but to look at that at basically 5 pennies to take care of both the increases of debt service, the fact that we're going to have a whole lot less coal severance dollars to plan for the future, and add in some $10 million of debt that you have not yet even approved. We're just working with your staff to say, being proactive, being visionary, if you would, knowing that there will be some needs that will be out there. So that's why we talk about the total being a nickel, equivalent of a nickel. So a few things here I don't think I need to belabor because y'all are experts at this, and that is the demographics and the tax base of the county. When we received those initial ratings, they're called AA3 by Moody's, AA- by Fitch. They are considered very strong. That's not my term, that's the rating agency's term. That's in comparison to you versus others, both in the state and throughout the country. That's their terminology. Now, they pointed out that one of the relative weaknesses is your demographics, something that you and all of Southwest Virginia cannot change, will not change overnight or even in several nights, because it's tied in to unemployment, income levels, population that's struggling to stay afloat. All of those things you have little, if any, control over. But what they do see you have control over is the things you have done a very good job at. And that is, you have set aside strong reserves. You have basically had balanced budgets, structurally balanced. You have worked hard to have economic development. And one of the things that we showed to them was the Dominion Power Plant, the Virginia City project, which again is a big driver. It added some 60+% to your overall valuation as it related to assessed value. That had a big driver in terms of overall helping the finances of the county several years ago. However, that said, you still had to do a couple of increases in your real estate tax rate. You did that twice over the last decade, and frankly, rating agencies see that as your willingness to do the difficult things, and so they take comfort. They don't want to see you not do the things you need to do to have structurally balanced budgets, and you did those things. So again, that's how they look at the offsets to what is, again, a challenging demographic tax base. Okay. So I mentioned a few moments ago your credit ratings. You can see these various categories. There's 4 of them. All of those are considered investment grade. There is then basically 6 or 7 plus categories below that 4th tier that's considered non-investment grade. There's only one local government in Virginia that has, I think only one that I'm aware of, and we've been trying to help them. We were brought in by the state to help them, Petersburg, that is below investment grade. A number of local governments have no credit rating. Doesn't mean they're not good, solid credits. They just don't have and haven't had a reason to go get a credit rating. But of those that have, they basically are in the top 4 categories. You're in that 2nd tier, and you can see where you are there. You're in that lower part of that 2nd tier, and it would be our recommendation that you do everything possible to try to stay in that AA category. If you move to that single A category, it is, again, still a strong category, but the goal would be to try to stay into that AA category. And the things that you do coming up in the 2020 budget deliberations will go a long way to where you end up credit rating wise. So I just pointed out when you could see the real estate tax rate. It was back 2013 into 14, 27 into 2018. You can see where that occurred. Okay. And then just to give you a perspective, you'll see here that your tax rate at 62 cents is basically 6 pennies below the Virginia state average for counties. It's at 68 cents. We just wanted to give you a highlight of where some of your neighbors were. Again, you can just see the state average, 68 cents, here at 62. All right, so part of the reason we're here and part of the financial review that we did was to look at, over the years, all of your various critical funds. And the general fund is perhaps the most critical fund as it relates to the school debt, as it relates to coal severance, because it goes into that fund. And what you'll see here, if you look carefully, is the total revenues is that sort of light blue line, sort of that Carolina blue color. And then the expenditures are that sort of that Duke color. So what we'll do here is like Carolina for a moment more than we'll like Duke. How's that? Because we want to see that light blue line be a little higher. I, being a Virginian, don't want to see either of them, so that's another story altogether. But that said, if you would, you'll notice that even into 2016, total revenues were healthy and above the expenditures, total expenditures out. And that's all well and good. It's why the fund balances are strong. It's why I said you've done a very good job. 2017 was almost a break even, and 2018 was somewhat in the red. Now, having said that, you also did some very good things by taking some one-time dollars and paying down some $3.5 million of debt. So you did that as well as part of all this. But what is happening is we're getting to the point where the fact is the coal severance, the dollars have dried up so much that we're now starting to see that on a going forward basis, we're going to be tapping into that very strong unassigned fund balance that you built up. And that unassigned fund balance, as I said earlier, is basically that rainy day fund. And so, having said that, you created a policy several years ago that said that that unassigned fund balance would be basically 8.5% of your overall budget. Well, two things. Number one, that we believe needs to go up at least double, roughly double, to some 15%. That is what highly rated governments like yours look like. And part of the reason we had 8.5% back then is we also had a very strong pot of dollars tied to school monies that we put aside. That was, I believe, about $9 million. So a lot of that has been used over time. So what we're saying is we want to make sure that we really have a very substantial unassigned fund balance going forward. And the reasons for that is because as long as we have a good fund balance, we don't need to worry about doing any sort of interim funding throughout the year to pay bills. You'll notice several of your communities around you, some of the counties, don't have this ample fund balance, and they actually have to basically do a payday loan to take care of their bills because of the way cash flows work for all local governments. So we don't want to see you go down that path, and frankly, highly rated local governments are not expected to be doing that. And so you're not doing that. We don't want to see you do that, and so we want to make sure the fund balance stays strong. Having said that, because it's also very strong, one of the things we're going to talk about is a strategy to use some of that, but still be way in excess, considerably in excess of your policy, to allow you to not have to go to that equivalent 9 pennies that I alluded to a few moments ago, but to be more to the 5 pennies. So again, all of this is holistic. We've got all the information behind it, if you'd like, in our report. But this is, again, just trying to give you all the summary on behalf of you and the citizens. So let's just go down a little bit so we can see the top of that, if you don't mind. All right, this is the coal severance trends. Since 2014 alone, it's gone down 64%. You can see from its high in 2011, less than a decade ago, basically 7 years ago, it was somewhere north of $14 million. This year, total, will be under $2 million. So again, it has dropped greater than anyone had expected. At the same time, you've kept your unassigned fund balance strong. You've had strong balanced budgets. So this county has really done a good job. But we see again, finally, the pressures are getting there with regard to going forward. And the going forward is what we're talking about as well tonight. So this is your existing debt. It goes from, as I said, roughly 4.3 million up to about 6.3 million, then levels off and then drops down. You do a very good job of paying your debt off rapidly. Just to give you a perspective, if you think of it, anyone who's fortunate enough, for example, to own a home, and let's say they have a mortgage that's at $100,000. In 30 years, that mortgage is typically paid off, but after the first 10 years, the average Virginian, or average American for that matter, will pay off about 25%, or about $25,000 of that $100,000. You, in your situation, you pay off well over half of that in the first 10 years. So you're much better payout than if you were the average citizen. That's important because obviously as an ongoing entity, there's always going to be other needs like the 10 million we talked about. So we know that that's going to inevitably be there. Maybe it's not this year or next year, but it's going to be there just because, again, viable, dynamic counties have needs, and you're going to be no different, and you are no different than they are. I will say that one of the other things in our report is that we have a series of policies that you implemented. You're in compliance with all of those policies. So again, we wanted, just for time's sake purposes, to let you know, and the citizens to know, you have not broached any of those policies. You're in compliance and will continue to be in compliance with all of those policies in the way you operate. So the last part of my presentation tonight is talking about how we go from what appears to be about a 9-penny impact down to a 5-penny impact to provide sustainable dollars for your overall increase in debt service, some future debt service, not making any reliance on unassigned fund balance in the future, and not expecting that the coal severance dollars will move back up in any material, meaningful way. So what we've done this way is to give you 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 contemplates that we, as a county, would look to the $15 million literary loan notes that we have outstanding and would basically wait until such time as the Commonwealth gets around to getting us that money, which we would get at 2%, and it's front-loaded, and it would happen, and we repay it over 20 years, but it would be what we call front-loaded. That's how the loan program is set up. The second approach is to bypass that and go directly to permanent financing sometime the next few months. And that would be more market rate financing, probably be low in the area of 3.5%, so that over time, the county would pay roughly $2 million, a little less than that, but around $2 million more in debt service over a 20-year period, or could, not guaranteed, but not have the same cash flow burdens that you'd be facing under scenario 1. That differential is worth, or saving, is a couple of pennies or so on the overall impact to your citizens. Because again, one would be more levelized, the other would be more front-loaded. And we'll show you what that looks like in a couple of moments. But at least I'd like to do this before that. Let's show you on page 12, if you would, what I'm sort of talking about. So in scenario 1, to take care of what would be, again, more front-loaded debt and to take care of the county projects, I alluded to the fact it's going to be almost 9 pennies. Looks to be about 8.6, rounding off to 9. And of that, almost 2 pennies is related to county projects. So what we would need is the equivalent of about 6.7 pennies. So that's the sort of the pressures that are on us over the next couple of years. In scenario 2, if you were to go down that path, we would need the equivalent one time of the equivalent of 3 pennies for the school program. And if we ultimately factor in the county projects at 10 million, we need roughly 2 pennies. That's why I said there that's roughly a nickel. It's 4.9 the way the numbers work. I'm rounding up to 5 pennies. So that's what the 2 scenarios look like, the trade-offs. And I wanted to show you on the next page how that would work and why it would be less onerous. And you can see, if you just go, thank you, just see there what we would do in the scenario 2. So we're not extending the debt, but we are shaving that peak there, the dotted lines. And by shaving that peak, scenario 2 would look more like the green versus the cream. And again, still the same final maturity, but we're going to be shaving it, levelizing it a little bit more. And that incorporates, by the way, that incorporates the $10 million of money that, again, would inevitably be borrowed. We're acting as if you'd be borrowing that money early on. In reality, I suspect that's a little ways off, but we've looked at it holistically and said, if the county could look at this as a one-time nickel, that would be the equivalent of a one-time nickel, that would get you to be able to take care of the rise in the debt service, the takeout of those literary loan notes with permanent financing, and $10 million, all of which does not rely on broaching your unassigned fund balance policy, which we're recommending gets basically almost doubled to that 15%. So with that, just the last page or two is just the time schedule. We would talk about what your decisions are at the balance of March. If indeed it turns out that the governor's veto session and what have you, and whatever he does and this legislature does not change things, we have been under the impression in talking to the Department of Education that it looks like we will probably not get taken out this year. So we would have to come back to you if you chose scenario 1 and do what we call a rolling of those literary notes for probably a year or two. That's something we've done many times before with your neighbors throughout the state. And that's all baked into that first scenario. And having said that, should they somehow come up with those monies, we would expect to get those in October or thereabouts, we would still recommend that we look at scenario 2, because again, it's less burdensome overall for the county and citizens. But it does come at a cost, and that is over time, there's some dollars cost, but that's factored in. So with all that being said, we would look at what your pleasure is over the course of the next month or two and make sure that we had everything done and put in place. The goal is by the end of June 30th. If, again, you get to your tax rate and the things you need to do on time, and I think we could do all those things and be done by June 30th. At that point, last page here, we would work towards a plan that makes sure that everything comes together with regard to the funding of all these needs. And that would all be done by late October, mid-November. So with that, I'm happy to answer, Mr. Chairman, any questions y'all might have. I thank you for listening.
Does anyone have any questions? I'll give you just a moment or two, and then we'll move on. Any questions?
Had you looked at anything about taking that $10 million out, what it would look like with that?
Yes, sir. So what it would look like if you go to, give me a second, page 12, if you would, page 12, like that. If you were to take out the 10 million for now, we're looking at, in scenario 2, 3 pennies, the equivalent is 3 pennies. Scenario 1, it's 6.7. It would not all be necessary, the 6.7 in the first year, probably be at least 3 pennies in the first year, and then be some more pennies over the course of a couple, 3 years. That's why we wrote fiscal year 2020 to 2024 for that. But you would need basically at least double the amount of pennies to stay in the first scenario.
What about, you had mentioned the unassigned fund balance.
Yes, sir.
That even if we went to 15%, there would still be a significant amount of money above that.
So there would be some excess. We are recommending, to help work all this out, that we use $3.5 million of that monies to allow us to further shave the pennies, if you would. So we factored that into scenario 2, which is to use that strategically. So that would be important. Actually, scenario 1 and 2, we factored that in, I should say. So we've already used some of that, but we're still leaving ourselves, meaning ourselves, the county, a cushion, so that if some things happen that are further out of our control or unexpected, we're not going to be right against that 15%. That's the goal.
What is the interest rate on that $15 million for the area loan that we're paying to put it on?
Right now, that's a very, very good loan. It's in and around the 2% range right now, as I recall. I could be off on that, Mr. Robbins. I can go find that. That's a fixed rate we're paying right now. And so again, if we convert, when it comes to the state program, it'll be 2%. We know that with certainty. If we go to the scenario 2, it'll probably be more like 3.5%. That's what our estimates are. And we'll only know what that is once we go into the marketplace, which would be sometime late summer, early fall. And that's what I showed on that schedule. So we'll know that. We've estimated in that area around 3.5% to 4%. That's what we've done.
But we're paying the 2% right now.
Something like that. I don't have it right in front of me, but I could get that for you. It's a fixed rate with the bank. I just don't remember right now.
And those are short-term, interest-only loans. You're
Yes.
not paying anything towards the principal of those loans.
That's correct.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
no question, just some comments.
Okay.
Mr. Rhodes, thank you. Thank you for a lot of hard work. We definitely need to look at our finances, figure out what's the best for Wise County. I have some concerns with this report. I have some concerns for our citizens of Wise County. The median income, as you have shown in your report, is slightly over $33,000. That's about $2,500 per month at the median income for our citizens. If that median family income is supporting the husband, wife, and 2 children, let's say one of the child is in high school, the other is in college, they probably have a house payment, they probably have a car payment. Even though if we're talking about a $100,000 home, which is kind of modest, we're only talking about a $50 increase. But a $50 increase to a family that has that kind of burden, financial burden, I have difficulty sitting here raising taxes 5 cents. My other concern, we haven't looked at the budget as a board. I have no idea what the school system's going to ask for this year. Where we are, we haven't had any discussion. We're to the point where a draft budget is just weeks away from mandated by us. So we have a lot of work to do. I don't see any consideration given to future projects in this report. And I guess why I say future projects, I don't want to ask our taxpayers to take anything out of their pocketbook that we don't need now, that we don't need immediately. And as I heard some of this presentation, we're talking about this being over a 4 or 5 year period to bring this debt down and get us into a good situation, a better situation. We have heard discussions from Dominion Energy Company about a hydroelectric plant potentially being in Tazewell County or Wise County. Regardless of the location, there's going to be revenue sharing. I don't think that potential revenue has been brought into consideration in this report. Just reading in the local paper the last day about money from the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy, specifically the abandoned mine land funds, that could bring in, that the anticipation is, the approval for projects is that there would be an industrial site built at the intersection of 23 and 58. That has the potential of 350 jobs. That has the potential of $10 million being brought in for investments in Wise County. Part of that federal money is being considered for homestead projects. which will bring more people, bring more young people, encourage young people that graduate maybe UVA Wise or MECC to stay here, to relocate here. Not only is this federal money, but some of our local agencies are already putting a pot of money together to develop the infrastructure for those sites. And just think about homesteading, what it used to be and what it could be for our future. These are some of the things that I haven't seen considered in this report. It's things that I think is potential over the next 4 or 5 years. Do I want to raise revenue now when that potential's out there, when it could come in? I would almost bet that there's never been a time in Wise County when tax money has been given back to our citizens. If this 5-cent tax passes, and any of these potentials come in and bring revenue to Wise County, what's the potential of giving a tax break to our citizens? I just think it's early. Yes, we need to look at our finances, we definitely do. We want to keep a good bond rating. The other question I have in my mind, as some of our other board members sit up here with me, we know the need for a social services building. We know that we have them temporarily located. But the other thing, do we have business or industry pushing to move them out of that temporary location? Does that have to be done right now? Does that have to be done this coming year? And the question in addition to that is, does it have to be done all at, well, before I get to that question, let me back up. Got a lot on my mind because I'm concerned about our taxpayers out there. I'm concerned what this impact would be to their daily lives, whether they buy medicine or whether they buy food or whether they pay their rent or whatever they do. But my other concern is social services. Social services is different than the school system. Social services will pay back, contribute to us paying back the loan on what we do for that building. I'm not sure that that payback has been considered in this scenario. Certainly should be. Every penny that we can save needs to be looked at. I got 2 pages of notes here, but I guess I'll just let it stop at that and say, my concern, again, I want to thank you for the good report, great information, food for us, for our leadership that we have to look at, we have to be diligent, not just for this year, but on down the road. So I do appreciate every bit of that, and I'm not questioning the quality of your report, because you and I have been in this, talking with each other for several years. And I know that you have our best interest at heart, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate what you said, Mr. Rivers. Again, there's a lot of good points there. Nobody, besides all of you, would love to see a lot of these things that potentially could come to pass would happen. I think Mr. Schoolcraft asked that good question about just what you alluded to is, all right, what is necessary in terms of school-related, and then what is with the 10 million there. You know, I used to kid to people, I said, you know, the reason we always wear dark suits is we sort of bring maybe some somber news, you know. And, you know, if I wore maybe a white suit like Tom Wolfe did, you know, they might think, you know, bringing all good news. But having said that, we've done with y'all, and maybe not with you, social service financing. We've done it with many of your neighbors around the state. And yes, indeed, they pay literally all of those dollars for that. And that would be great, and that's what we expect to have happen. But why we wrote county facilities is that it could be beyond just that type of facility. So we put a worst case, that's what I mean by the dark suit, and we said, okay, if you, worst case, have to shoulder that burden and nobody helps out, meaning state, federal, what have you, what is that equivalent? That's why I said to you, Mr. Schoolcraft, to everybody, that's the equivalent of that roughly 2 pennies. So that's how we sort of, that's why we delineated there 1.9 rounding off the 2 pennies. That's how we show that. But all the other points that are made are again, very solid, very strong. would love to see a lot of those things come to pass. Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm like Mr. Rivers, I appreciate the effort that you put into it, and I think it's good information. And I appreciate your comment too, that you've given us a worst-case scenario. And I think that's probably what we have to look at, is that, like you said, if we have to shoulder the entire amount, this is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you are with Washington County, the two highest rated counties financially, ratings, credit rating wise, west of, the sort of the southwest, all of Southwest Virginia, the whole region. There's a reason for that. And so again, but it's still a difficult burden, it's still not easy, and again, we are trying to be very careful and cautious. We know we've got debt service rising, and that's sort of, again, we want to be in a mode where nobody says, well, we didn't realize this was happening, we didn't realize this was going to happen and come. So, like I said, you've done remarkably well, given we all expected coal severance to come down when we did the whole school program, and I worked with y'all on that, but nobody expected to come down 90%. That's just not, that was not in anybody's, and we're not economists, that wasn't our world, but you still have operated very well in spite of that. So, yes.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rose, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone here for public expression? Please give your name and your address, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Frank Kibler, Senior Planner, Lennox-Code PDC in suburban Duffield. Very briefly, hopefully, farther down your agenda, you have a request to adopt a resolution to support a community development block grant application for a sewer project we've been working on for PSA. I just asked for your favorable consideration of that. This would be a project to extend public sewer service to a presently unserved area east of Coburn. It is actually a couple of phases. This would be the first phase of that out in the Banner area. So again, that is coming up on your agenda in a little bit. And speaking on behalf of your regional planning agency, I would appreciate your favorable consideration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kibler.
Good evening, members of the board. Chuck Slim, Commonwealth Attorney for Wise County and the City of Norton. I will be as brief as possible, okay? I've got a lot of numbers and things I want to tell the board, and I'm going to try to skim through it as quick as I can, but the clicker is not working. So I will say when the next slide is. So first, I want to say, first of all, thank you again for your support of our Wise Works program. As the board already has read in newspaper reports, it's been widely successful. I thank the board for their support of our program. Our director is here, Brian Caldwell. Thank you, Brian, for your work. Over the past 18 months, Wise Works has saved the county and localities $200,000 in jail costs, no, excuse me, $200,000 in labor savings, and almost $400,000 in jail costs. That's an incredible number. Not only is it saving money, but it's changing and transforming lives for the better. And thank you for that support. Today, in the halls of the courthouse, this young lady came up to me. She was there to be drug tested by Mr. Caldwell, and she came up and gave me a hug. I thought she was going to attack me or something. But she gave me a hug and thanked me for providing her the opportunity to, instead of go to jail, be with her kids and get some job training. And I said, don't thank me, thank the Board of Supervisors, because they're the ones that invested in this. And I genuinely mean that. Thank you all. I'm also joined today by members of my team as well. Ken Lammers, one of our senior assistant Commonwealth attorneys, and Beth Hildebrand. Beth is one of our paralegals. I'm going to talk quickly because I want the board to understand, and I do not envy the precarious position the board is in and the difficult choices ahead for the county's finances. I thank you for your service and for your hard decisions. I just want to make sure the board understands as we move forward the great and important role of local government in supporting our justice system and making sure that we support public safety. And as I do this quick presentation, move to the next slide, I want to say that the Wise County Commonwealth Attorney's Office is the largest office west of Roanoke. Of the 120 jurisdictions across Virginia, we are one of the largest anywhere. Last year, we did 30,000 cases in court. Think about that. General District Court, we had almost 9,000 or 8,000 hearings in traffic court, almost 13,000 criminal cases in General District. In juvenile court, of the cases involving children, traffic and delinquency cases, almost 4,250. In domestic cases, 3,300. Our JDR court also has a drug court program. We deal with protective orders. We deal with juveniles on probation. We also have a deferral program so that juveniles don't always go into the criminal justice system. Our office works intricately with all those different programs. Last year, circuit court cases, new cases, not the old cases, not the cases that we're still prosecuting from 4 years ago, new cases, 3,146 new criminal matters in court that our office is responsible for. In circuit court, we are required to do a whole lot of things. 2 capital murder cases are currently pending. Our office is prosecuting 600 misdemeanor appeal cases, numerous probation violations, name change petitions, concealed carry handgun permit cases. We do deal with restitution payments and those who fail to pay restitution. We enforce marriage license filing, something that I didn't realize we did until recently. We make sure that anyone who's petitioning to have their driver's license restored is safe to drive. We represent the Commonwealth and the citizens in restoration of firearms petitions, bond forfeitures, writs of habeas corpus, civil forfeitures, protective orders. We also work with the probation office, and Ms. Caldwell is here from District 18 Probation and Parole. Last year, they had 15,000 individuals working with our office on felony probation here in Wise County. We work with our drug court program to support the community and to make sure that we hopefully have productive citizens and not citizens in jail. Over the course of the past year, we've reviewed numerous applications of those 3,000 new criminal cases. We have to review a significant number who want to be part of our drug court, but we have to be very selective in making sure the right candidates are in drug court. We have 15 applications currently pending that we're going through the process and making sure they're the right fit. In addition, I want to make sure that the board understands, as one of the largest jurisdictions west of Roanoke, the courts expect us to prosecute for other counties, which kind of seems a little contrary to what you might expect. But we're ordered, and we don't get a choice. The court sends us an order that says, you must prosecute these cases. We got one today by fax. Nobody asked us, and we have to prosecute it. We're currently doing 75 open cases and investigations, 44 in Scott County, 21 in Lee, and we don't, a lot of times, get reimbursed at all for it. We're just ordered to go, and we represent the citizens of Virginia. 8 different jurisdictions right now pending those prosecutions. Our other duties, between 750 and 12,000 phone calls come through our office every single week. We've handwrite subpoenas, because they have to be handwritten, 5,000 to 10,000 witness subpoenas every year. Our office does over 100 search warrants every year with law enforcement, thousands of bond hearings, roughly 10,000 extraditions and hearings each year. We review statements of economic interest that you guys file. They come through my desk. We give you conflicts of interest opinions. 24/7 availability for law enforcement. When they need something, they call us in the middle of the night, and we go out and respond to criminal scenes just like law enforcement officers do. We have to respond, and Ken Lamberts does most of them. Anytime somebody appeals a judgment from the circuit court, our office has to give the first initial response to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court before the Attorney General ever steps in to handle them. I will tell you from experience, if we don't, the Court of Appeals will grant that petition and slow down justice for a victim or a family. It's happened before, and we make sure that doesn't happen. Also, we have numerous walk-ins in our office every single day of people seeking justice, people needing help, victims of crime, or individuals who've been victimized or just need legal advice. A lot of times we can't give them legal advice because they want civil advice. But a lot of times, they want to report a crime, and they want to talk to a prosecutor about it. And we are always accessible and open and willing to give them that advice. Criminal discovery rules are changing in Virginia. Next July, it will go in effect that we have to produce a new document for every defendant in every criminal case that lists our witnesses. We've never had to do that before. It will be an incredible amount of new work on our paralegals and our prosecutors. Additionally, the rules also require us to review body camera footage, in-car camera footage, drug-by video footage, and the rules oftentimes require us to edit and redact certain parts in order to protect the identity of witnesses. You might imagine that is a daunting task for folks who have to also be in court managing 4 different courts all the time, every day, sometimes more. We oftentimes have 2 trials going at the same time. There was an instance recently we had 2 jury trials at once, as well as grand jury all meeting at the same time, as well as juvenile court and general district court. It was an impossible task. We do special prosecutions, as I've already said. We prosecute misdemeanors, we prosecute for the localities, we prosecute in special grand jury hearings, in multi-jurisdictional grand jury hearings, and we help with drug court. Right now, there are 100 body cameras in use by our law enforcement officers. Now, I love body cameras because it provides us excellent evidence. And soon, state police will be also having body cameras. So we will have more body cameras. That results in tens of thousands of hours of video that, by the rules of discovery and by the rules of the Supreme Court, we don't have a choice. We have to review if we want to prosecute that case, every minute of it. We have to review it, we have to disclose it, we have to burn it on a disc and send it to somebody, and oftentimes, like I said, to protect the identity of a victim, we have to blur out or redact it. Our Victim Witness Office helps with countless individuals every single day. 250 per quarter is our average. They do phone calls in the middle of the night. Joni Coleman, our Victim Witness Director, is amazing, and she works her tail off, probably the hardest working person in the entire courthouse, in and out of court. They help make sure folks get restitution every single day and have the services they need. So who does the work? So just to try to wrap us up, to make sure you understand who our team is. You've met several of them, but we have 9 attorneys, again, the largest office west of Roanoke, 6 paralegal support staff, 2 victim witness officers, and 1 director of Wise Works. The majority of these individuals are all funded by the state without local support, without payment from the county, or very little support from the county as far as their salary goes. 4 of our members have been with our office for over 10 years, 3 over 15 years. 3 of our attorneys combined have experience of over 50 years. 1 has 32 years experience. And I will tell you, it's shameful that attorney with 32 years of experience makes the exact same amount as someone brand new out of law school without any experience. We have to do more with less. We get it. We understand we're in tough economic times. We are the busiest office west of Roanoke. Our staff and attorneys are significantly underpaid for what they do compared to other jurisdictions. Compensation Board says that we should, based on our numbers, have 2 additional employees, another paralegal and another attorney to handle the caseload. But we don't. They're not funded, so we don't have those individuals. On average, this shocked me when I started doing the math. On average, when compared to 8 jurisdictions in Southwest Virginia, our attorneys make 25% less than their counterparts in other jurisdictions. We've got all of these challenges. Go ahead and move forward. I'll rush through it. And I will say this. Right now, we have 2 attorney vacancies. 1 that's been open since September. I've tried to hire. We've offered it to, and I've got experienced defense attorneys. Back up. Well, back up one more slide. No, backwards. Sorry. Two back. Oops. Back. Sorry. There you go, right there. We've offered it to defense attorneys who want to come and prosecute, but after they learn the salary, they say, we can't do it. We had people wanting, who grew up in this area, young people who want to come and raise their families and have a career and start a profession here at home. And when they find out the salary and what they can make elsewhere, they turn us down. It's happened 4 times since September. We had 10 attorneys. This is the thing that is so heartbreaking to me because we're a family at our office. We are on the front lines prosecuting crime and keeping the community safe. But since I took office in 2016, 10 attorneys have left us to get better paying jobs in another county. It's heartbreaking to me because I love my people and I work with them every day, and it's horrible to see them go. Ken Lammers is with me, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. When I took office, this board asked me to cut. The only place to cut was in salaries. And I cut, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was about $80,000. Ken got the worst of it. He lost about $20,000 of his salary. But he did it because he's a hard-working public servant. Ken recently received a job offer to go somewhere else and make $80,000 instead of the $55,000 or so that he makes now. But he turned that down to stay in Wise County because he loves what he does and he loves this community. And I thank you, Ken. We can't continue, guys. We got to do more. And as you look at the tough challenges ahead of you in the budget cycle and ahead, we have those employees with 15 years of experience at the office that have never had a significant raise. Never. Maybe a little bit, 1% here or there, but never a significant raise. Many of them could leave today and find employment elsewhere to make a whole lot more money, and several have. The people who are fighting every day, good, hardworking people that love this community, are forced to decide whether to continue to feed their family on pennies or go somewhere else. You mentioned the $30,000, that's the poverty line. 5 of our paralegals make less than that. And those are the ones that are on the front lines keeping this community safe, keeping the bad guys in prison, keeping opportunities for justice when somebody breaks into a home. But there's opportunities. We've worked really hard to save the county money. WiseWorks has saved $500,000 since its creation 18 months ago. And recently, last quarter, the jail credited back half of the 4th quarter payment of the jail payments. That's about roughly $340,000. Now, I will tell you right now, I'm not asking for a dime for me. The state pays my salary. I don't get any hardly at all from the county except for insurance. It's not for me. I'm asking that this board invest in public safety and those hardworking people that go in day out, never ask for a dime, never complain about their salaries, never do anything except for work hard to protect the public, to serve law enforcement, to make sure our communities are safe. 30,000 cases worth. Some jurisdictions, Commonwealth attorneys, just gave up and said, we're not prosecuting misdemeanors anymore. We're not showing up in court anymore. We're not answering phone calls anymore. That's what they do. That's unacceptable to me. We have a duty, and we intend to do that duty. Hopefully I don't have to do that all by myself, okay? I want to say thank you for your time. I've talked way too much. And I do want to say that I'm proud of our people. They are hardworking and they're amazing at what they do. And please don't interpret this as me complaining. They don't complain. But I want to advocate for them, for our public safety officials at this budget cycle. As you have the tough decisions ahead of you, I hope the board would remember those who are working to create a safe community so that jobs can come in and so that people can live in a safe neighborhood. Our drug crimes have decreased since I've been Commonwealth attorney. The number of cases have decreased. That's awesome, but we got a lot more work to do. And in conclusion, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the juvenile court, the general district court, and the circuit court, because those numbers came from the court staff. Without them, we couldn't have done that. And thank you for your time. And I want to thank again my team for being here with us tonight. And for Brian for working so hard to save the county all that money in WiseWorks. So thank you. Yes, I'll answer.
I would like to give everybody an opportunity to ask you some questions right now.
Absolutely. And I'd be happy to talk in closed session 2 more if you want.
Right, that's probably where we will, but I would like a copy of those, of
Absolutely.
that presentation.
Absolutely, sir.
Would anyone else like? Could you give us 8 copies of the presentation?
I certainly will, yes, sir.
All right,
Thank
that's
you.
all I have.
If you will email it to me, I will email it to each of them.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Anyone else for public expression?
Harold Greer, 9326 Mill Creek Road and Pound. One comment I would make before I talk about what I basically came here to talk about. That's the fact that the taxes in Wise County do not need to be increased. They simply do not need to be increased. The economy here has not improved enough to justify a tax burden, a further tax burden on the people in this county. We are a low-income county. The days when we were a high-income county are gone to a large extent. And I see no prospect in the next several years of them returning. I don't see any prospect of the demography in the county increasing rapidly. It's not going to happen. We're in the mess we're in because the county simply spent too much money. You can't get around it. It spent too much money. Mistakes were made. The gentleman from Davenport said that no one realized that the severance tax would go down by 90%. Well, I can recall during the debate on the financing of the school situation where several people told this board and told the school board, and I was one of them, what will you do if the severance tax disappears? It was brought up several times. No one paid any attention to it. A gross overestimation was made also about the revenue from the power plant at St. Paul. I recall some folks were saying, well, hey, we're going to get $14 million out of this. There was never any prospect of this. It was quite easy to check on. All you had to do was check with Richmond and you would have found out you weren't going to get $14 million in revenue from it. Never was in the cards. So we're in a mess now because we overspent. And frankly, cuts are going to have to be made, probably some further cuts. And it's a difficult situation. But we never should have gotten ourselves in this mess to begin with. What I want to talk mainly about is the maintenance ordinance that was passed the last session of this board. As you recall, I had spoken previously on this about some complaints about the maintenance business, and they really were not addressed when the board passed this. There still are 2 basic problems with this. First of all, it is complaint driven. Well, you have an issue here. Who are the complainers? There's nothing to keep someone from going around who has no connection to the county except maybe an occasional visitor or something and complaining about rural property not being maintained to their satisfaction. And the ordinance, the Virginia Property Maintenance Code is loose enough that they can probably find a reason to object to it. I mean, it's not that tight. It actually could in many ways be challenged in court if a person wanted to. So there's no restriction on the complainers, and I don't know how you're going to be able to restrict the complainers. It's totally subjective. And indeed, the enforcement is subjective. Because if someone in, say, the building department, someone connected with zoning, receives a complaint, you know, they decide whether or not it should be acted upon. Again, it's subjective. And this creates a real problem. It's a threat to every rural property owner in the county. Now, you do have some sections in the county where you do have folks living closely together without corporations. But if you look at the mass of the county's area and the mass of the people who own property, they're really quite limited. This ordinance as passed covers the entire county. And again, it is a threat to the rural property owner. It will force him to spend money, or it could force him to acquire a great deal of legal debt if the county moves in to do something with his property, or if there are problems along those lines. And frankly, I've talked to several people about this, and 80% of the people I've talked to are dead set against it. Now, the problem with this is, if you could tighten it up, I would say possibly you could make it fly. But it certainly needs to be tightened up. As it stands now, again, it's a real threat to the property owners. I will make one other comment. There is a belief in a lot of folks here that if you improve the aesthetics of the county, and that, you know, if you spend enough money here, enough money there, that you're going to get some real industrial development. We'll get something in to replace coal. The truth of the matter is, as long as we allow free trade to exist in this country, as long as they can send jobs to Central America and Bangladesh and Indonesia and Malaysia, we're not going to see rural Virginia or the rural Upper South get any great increase in jobs. It's not going to happen. Free trade is cutting the throat of us. And there's nothing this board or the state can do about it. It's a federal issue. The other issue that's the problem for us is immigration. Not only illegal immigration, but legal immigration. Because that tends to take jobs away from people that are coming out of our colleges and universities. Not only UVA-wise, but East Tennessee State. You could just simply go down a list of them. The jobs are not being created here. The immigrants are coming in, working for lower wages. They're undercutting our people. We don't need this. Until these problems are solved, I don't think we're going to see any real economic development around here. But again, I hope the board will reconsider, certainly consider amending the maintenance ordinance as it was passed last month. Because again, it is a problem for the rural property owner. You can't get around it. It imposes an additional burden on him that frankly, many people simply can't afford. Just that simple. Thank you.
Anyone else for public expression? Close public expression. Consent agenda, we have one item. The first item that's on the list there has been removed, and we have two items remaining on the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I moved to the appropriations of the fourth quarter down to the unfinished business, old business. So we do have one item there at this time. And what has been requested is that we change our fourth quarter appropriations to a monthly based appropriations instead of quarterly. And this has been the recommendation in order to help maintain our status for possible loans. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to this, Mr. Hatfield?
No, sir. Other than the fact what this will do will allow us to further monitor our revenues as they're coming in compared to our expenses and help us to maintain that we're not going to be over budget for the year. So if we do it monthly, we can have a better control and be looking at it over the entire period to cut back if we need to during the final 2 months.
Any questions on that? Do I hear a motion to approve a monthly basis on this?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is not a one-time thing, is it?
No, we will basically tonight we will approve for month 10. Next month we will approve for month 11, and then the final month we'll approve for month 12.
I think what he's asking is that after this quarter, is this going to continue on?
Oh, no, it should go back to quarterly appropriations after the first year, after the first of the fiscal.
This is only for this, it's only for this quarter, the fourth quarter.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, is this because that there is an entity within the county that may have surplus that you want to control?
We are dealing with all the entities within the county for them to look at areas that they can cut back. So it's not just one entity, it is all the entities within the county, looking at where we can save money so that we ensure that we come in under budget for this fiscal year.
And by having appropriations monthly, it allows our administrative staff to keep a closer eye on where we are financially. Will it go beyond that? Will it go to the point of, we won't allow you to spend this money, we won't allow you to spend that money? Is there an additional motive beyond just being able to visually look at where each entity is within Wise County?
No, it would take a motion of this board to tell us we can't, that an entity cannot spend money that was already approved for them. What it would do is it gives us the framework to be able to negotiate with each of the departments within the county. And if we see we're going to have a shortfall, then we have the ability to negotiate with each one of those to get the cuts, to keep from having a shortfall and, again, eat into our fund balance.
And how much involvement would this board have in that discussion on any potential cutbacks? I understand that we've got the final vote, but now you're kind of talking about, well, you know, we can talk to them about this or we can talk to them about that. I guess this was kind of a surprise to me tonight that we were headed this direction. There has to be a driving force, a driving reason behind going here. I'm a little bit apprehensive on what the potential impact of this may hold for some of our county entities. And that's my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do I have a motion to,
You have a motion, that was discussion,
motion
and a second.
and a
You already
second?
have that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify. Now, this is for changing it monthly. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business. We have before us a resolution in support of the CDBG grant for the Banner Sewer Project. I'd like to make a motion myself that we approve this resolution.
Sir.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
seems like I'm full of comments this evening, but when I read about this, and maybe I missed something that I should have seen, but I first was knowledgeable of this by reading it in our local newspaper, that there was going to be a public hearing today at 4 o'clock in the courthouse on this grant application. And it's been something that always has been a concern of mine when it's a public hearing. My interpretation means that's so the public can come and give you their thoughts on what you're proposing. When you hold public meetings at 4 o'clock, which most of our citizens are working to 5, they don't have an opportunity to come out and participate in public hearings. I say all of this just to ask that in the future, whether it be the PSA board or this county board, and that we consider our citizens, because that's why we're holding the hearing. We're holding it for the citizens. So that's my concern. I mentioned it Tuesday night at the PSA, and kind of the response I got was, well, we're not the ones that scheduled this public hearing, meaning the PSA board or the PSA staff, and probably got the interpretation that it wasn't this board and this staff that scheduled it, that it was another entity that helps prepare these grants that scheduled that. And I regret that Mr. Kibler's not here to hear my comments, but all of us are a team. We need to work together, and when we're holding a public hearing, it needs to be as convenient for the public as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Contract agreement between DHCD and the Wise County Snow Flood Urgency Need Project. This is an agreement that has already taken place. And it needs our approval. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any nays? Motion carries. Discussion setting the property tax rate. Current property tax rate is on page 13, I think it's 62 cents. And we have the other different tax rates there. If you would, please look at page 13. We have the real estate, personal property, machinery and tools, merchants capital, and mobile homes. And we have to set a tax rate tonight. The tax rate needs to be so that it covers anything that we possibly would do. We can set a tax rate at a certain number and then increase the tax rate later on. Decrease the tax rate at the public hearing if we choose to do so. So just setting a tax rate now does not make it the tax rate that it would be. We have an opportunity to take it down, but we cannot take it back up. So that's where we're at right now. On real estate, we're at 62 cents, and it appears as though we're going to have to increase this tax rate. Do I hear a motion? If not, then I'll suggest that we do a 7-cent tax increase, and I'll put that out in the form of a motion. This is to cover anything and everything that could come before us. And at that point, what we could do, we could take it down to 5 cents, we could take it down to 3 cents, we could take it down to whatever. But if we don't set it up now, we're not going to have enough time, if something else comes up, to set a tax rate at a lower rate later on because of the public hearings that we have to have. And that's the only reason that I'd make that in the
Even before a public hearing.
There won't be time in order to approve the budget when we cover it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what we need to do is we can discuss the tax rate at this point. What our motion needs to be is to set a public hearing to raise the tax rate 7 cents or whatever rate that you all agree to for our next meeting. So we are not actually raising the tax rate this time. We're establishing a public hearing to be able to discuss that at our next board meeting.
That's all this is. But we can't, we can bring it down, but we can't bring it back up. So if we find out that we have to bring the tax rate up, then if it's not there, then we can't do it. Any further discussion, please?
I'll enter some discussion if you get a second.
Second. Gonna talk about it, so let's do it.
All right.
My concern is, and Mike has hit the nail on the head, we are not, and our public, our citizens need to understand this, we are not setting a tax rate tonight that is being proposed. All we're doing tonight is scheduling a public hearing on a potential, not potential, on what our tax rate will be for the coming year. So that needs to be clearly understood. Anything else you've heard tonight, it's not the way it is. This is only to schedule a public hearing. And I certainly cannot support 7 cents.
I don't think many of us do. But that's beside the point. Right now, we have to do this. And then we can set a rate. No, we are not setting it tonight. We're setting it out for a public hearing.
Same as we always do.
Whatever rate we establish, we have to establish a rate with the notice that goes into the paper.
And that rate cannot be exceeded next month without going to another public hearing.
Yes.
So that's the point of, that he's got. But you can't go less than that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those, now this is just real estate only. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Wait just one moment. Mike, what is the rate that they're voting on?
7 cents?
7 cents increase.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we're voting for 69 cents on real estate and public service corporation real estate.
That is
For
correct.
69 cents.
That is correct.
Will you repeat, can they hear that? That it's 69 cents in the motion, it wasn't placed as that amount.
Okay, it was raised as 7 cent increase on the real estate and the, public service.
Okay, I'm with you. I just wasn't sure about the motion.
Okay.
Are we ready to take a vote on it? We did. All right. Personal property. Any suggestions on that?
The motion's already made, Mr. Chairman.
We need to vote on the
We
motion.
need to vote on the
Oh, I
motion.
thought we did. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I thought we did too.
And,
Opposed?
Ms. Kilgore stopped us in the middle of the vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone opposed?
I'd like to abstain because I think this is an excessive increase.
Okay. We have one
We
abstention.
have to, and the reason I'm abstaining and not voting against it, we have to hold a public hearing.
Exactly.
So that's why I will not vote no, but I will abstain.
And the motion carries with one abstention. Personal property tax has been set and assessed at $1.58 per hundred. What is the board's privilege on that? And again, this is only setting a public hearing, and it is not setting that tax rate. That's just, and that wasn't mentioned earlier. So personal property could be adjusted and possibly lower the real estate. But whatever you set tonight, you can lower it, but you can't raise it.
Just strange. I said this is strange to the way that we've done it for,
Well,
If we're having discussion, I would like to interject a thought. According to the statistics that Mr. Rhodes presented tonight, and I'll round them off, but it's basically 2/3 of our citizens pay real estate tax. There's 1/3 of our citizens that do not pay real estate tax. The tax burden, when we raise the real estate taxes proposed here tonight at 7 cents, is a burden on 2/3 of the people. It's not equally shared among all of the citizens of Wise County.
You got any suggestions?
I'm not
on how to do
suggesting-
it, third?
No, sir. Mr. Castle, I'm not suggesting that we raise the personal property. And I don't have any figures. I don't know how much a penny brings in.
well, we need to set something tonight, to send out for a public hearing.
This don't mean anything, but I mean, just the 2 cents, just go on to the meeting, it doesn't really mean anything right now, until we meet next time.
Do we need- Right, and as it's been said earlier with the real estate tax rate, the only thing it means is we can't increase it.
Right.
Exactly.
And I guess the point I'm making is, do we want to consider that not all of our citizens are paying a fair share when we raise only the real estate tax?
Once we get these numbers set and everything, we can go back and look and see if any of these other numbers can be readjusted.
How much does 1 penny on
not gonna be
personal
that.
That's
property?
what I was gonna ask.
Approximately $40,000.
40,000.
And 1 penny on real estate is approximately $330,000.
On what?
Real estate is approximately $330,000, and personal property is approximately $40,000.
Okay.
for 1 penny.
And personal property, that's the cars
Cars,
that everybody
trailers,
owns.
motorcycles, anything like that.
Yeah. I have, Steve, are you putting that in the form of a motion?
Can I just check what it is?
I do need a motion on this.
It'd take almost a 10-cent
Yeah. that's what
personal property increase to reduce 1 cent of real estate.
So what is the board's wishes on this? You want to add the 2 cents, you want to just leave it the same, what?
Have we ever done it this way before?
No, we have not, we've not been in this situation before.
Strange, as I say.
If I may interject, Mr. Chairman, what we did last year was we increased the real estate and we increased the personal property both 2 cents. So we had done it over both last year. And what Mr. Davenport's presentation said was that we do an equivalent to the 5 cents or the 9 cents, whichever scenario that you took to the real estate. So you can spread that over the other things. The most consistent that is collected is the real estate. The most, because, and it's established every 4 years what the assessment of those properties is with some minor changes each year. But it is the most consistent of what you collect, and it is the one that we collect the highest percentage of. We collect approximately 98% of our real estate.
Before we go any further, I'd like to ask this question. Machinery and tools, how much did that bring in?
Very little.
Very little, yeah.
Almost none anymore.
That's correct.
What about the merchant's capital?
I would have to recall.
Probably not very much.
It's not very.
On the low end, it's nothing compared to the personal property or real estate.
And what about mobile homes? It's at 62 and our real estate's at 62. What did that bring in?
It's also
Very small.
very small.
So I'd like for you to look at those. We've got to make that decision tonight.
I would think we have several people living in mobile homes.
We do, but the value of those mobile homes is
Very
compared
small.
to the value of the land, and the stick-built houses is considered.
And a lot of the people living in mobile homes don't own the land that the mobile homes are placed on.
That's correct.
Okay, if there's no discussion on this, I'm gonna,
Well, it's just, I mean, just put 7 cents or 8 cents, either one, just don't mean nothing. I mean, to get it up to that point, I mean, to get that 1 penny down for real property tax.
bring it all up to 7 cents. Up 7, is that your,
Well, for the personal property.
For
just
personal property.
Say 7 cents. I mean, 'cause
is
it's-
that in the form of a motion?
Yes,
I have a motion that we increase, that we send out for public hearing, 7 cents on personal property. Do I hear a second?
Sir?
Any discussion?
We're still doing them line by line.
That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr.
Machinery and tools.
Mr.
You're
Chairman,
not saying the date of this, you need to say the
Oh.
date.
All right, we will set the date at the next board meeting at, right here at 6 p.m. on April the 11th. Be the public hearing on all of these.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with us adopting, making this motions tonight, we're only doing this for the matter of discussion.
Matter of discussion.
It's not setting any rates, period.
No.
Just
That is
for matter of
correct.
discussion.
This is to get the citizens' input. This is to find out where we are. This is not setting a tax rate. This is sending this out for public expression only. And then we'll set the tax rate. We need to be prepared to set a tax rate next month. That's when the rubber hits the road.
Mr. Chairman, can you make a motion say that we in my mind now, make a motion not to, don't do the rest of them, say, don't tax increase for the other three.
You can if you want to make it even.
Just make no, I just no tax, I just want to make a motion, we have no tax increase.
No tax for the next three.
It doesn't amount to anything, what you do.
Now, we can't raise those after we set this.
What are you talking about, machinery and tools and
Yeah, it doesn't amount.
it's worth.
Machinery and tools and merchants capital and mobile homes.
Yeah, it's not worth.
Keep them the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Motion, we keep the rest the same.
I have a motion that we keep these the same. Do I hear a second?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
ma'am.
I'm not sure, did we vote on the personal property?
Yes,
Yes, we
they did. It
Yeah,
was
we did.
Yes, we did.
For our records, who made the motion, was it?
Steve made the motion and Bobby Castle
I need to do the vote.
made the second.
Was it unanimous?
And unanimous
vote?
vote?
Yeah.
We had J.H. abstained, but the rest of us voted yes.
I'll
Yeah,
make
he was
personal.
saying on that.
That was, I only abstained on.
Only on the personal property. I mean, real estate.
So it was unanimous on the,
Yeah, that's what I didn't do.
Can I ask another question before?
And can you get my vote?
Can we discuss this other?
Yes.
motion Steve made yet?
Can we
I
walk
agree
in?
with what they're saying.
Have we
But
voted on this
again, that
discussion
personal
that
property
Steve
rate
made about
is
raising the,
165.
Not yet.
raising the increase?
Is that
On
correct?
the,
right, yeah, it would be $1.60.
the real estate and personal property, we voted to set a public hearing
Yeah, I
at
make a
7
motion to
cents.
leave the rest of them.
And the rest of it's the same. The motion's been made, but it's not been seconded.
I'll second that.
It's been seconded, and now the discussion on it. Any discussion on this?
I think that, well, yes, there is. Majority of it, I mean, there's a big portion of people that live in mobile homes in Wise County. It seems to me that, I mean, I lived in one myself for several years, and there's a very good, it's very good housing, but if they're gonna slide on this real estate, all these properties, I mean, all this stuff that we're doing, real estate, I don't think that's fair to the people.
It's paying the real estate.
They're paying the real estate for people that's occupying and own a mobile home.
That's the way it is.
It's a house.
Most of them's rental.
That's a
They
house.
don't pay anything.
Well, and if there's, even if it's a rental,
But
they need.
somebody needs to pay
How
it.
much do we
But
bring?
that's a home and that's a house, that's their domicile, that's where they live. Just like you and I do, if you live in a house. And I just think that it should be considered, be part of the consideration in increasing taxes and responsibilities to provide services to people in Wise County.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with
Mike,
what
would it
Mr.
be a
Castle
problem
said.
with, if you, then, that people could argue they were in a mobile home, how the commissioner may assess it as a house? Would that be would we be arguing over the code of whether it was a house or a mobile home?
I don't know, I think that's fairly well established in the code on how you determine the difference between a house and a mobile home.
I think it's whether it has wheels on it or not.
No,
It's not.
well, I think you can surrender the title to a mobile home, and
But we've
then
always had the same rate on both.
I would think that we would want them all to pay the same rate. We're making a differential here that I don't see.
didn't think that.
Would you like to withdraw your
I'll
motion?
just rescind my
You would like to withdraw it?
motion.
Okay. You want to jump down to the mobile home and do it?
Yeah,
No,
I just make a motion that.
To do them all?
let him talk.
I'm just gonna make a motion that we keep machinery and tool and merchants capital the same.
Okay.
And
You're not gonna get no
And
revenue
then
from
raise
it.
the mobile homes to 7 cents as the,
Okay.
real estate.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Second. All right, I have a motion and second. Any discussion now? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that takes us through that. And remember, this is only setting a public hearing. This is not setting the rate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
since this is, at least to this board member, completely fresh, new, we've never done it this way before, I would like to see immediately, at least early next week, what this would bring in to Wise County per category, how much it would bring in per additional, it would bring in per real estate, per personal property since we raised that, and per mobile home since we raised that. So the three areas that we've raised, I'd like to know what that brings in. And if it could be broken down into per penny, then that would even be better for me to make an informed decision when I vote for the citizens of Wise County.
Could you email that information to
Yes,
us?
sir.
All right, it will be done. Okay, if you'll look on page 14, we have budget amendments.
Wait, Mike,
Yes,
I think you better also identify the public service corporation, because public service corporation is a different category. And you all dealt with the first part on page 13. And I think we need a motion to bring the public service corp at the same rate. What do you think, Karen?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, looking at this, we've usually done it as a resolution, as a slate, and I think we took the long way to get there, but I think under the Public Service Authority, Public Service Corporations, when we raise the real estate rate, it raises the real property. When we raise the personal property, it goes to the rate that we've set at the, if you're looking at your resolution, and we've always done that. So I think what we have just done is real property and merchants capital, we've raised that to the 69 cents, and the 158 on the personal property, that's 165. And I think those code sections work together. When we set the real estate rate, when we set the personal property rate, I think the Public Service Corporation does that. If we want to make a motion that be the advertised public hearing for April the 11th, that would reflect, if you're looking at your the resolution in your packet on page 13, is that real estate is 69 cents, personal property is 165, machinery and tools 141 per 100, doesn't change, merchants capital 285 per 100, doesn't change, mobile homes is 69 cents per 100, and then under the Public Service Corporations, the same follows suit. Real property is 69 cents, personal property is 165, merchants capital is 69. And that follows suit of what we've done in previous years, normally as a slate.
Okay.
But again, this shows the intent of the board to consider a possible increase by determining what amount is needed. But again, we can't go higher unless it's advertised.
Okay.
We can go lower, we cannot make a change, or we can make a change in between there. Between now and next month, I know the county is working on its budget, and that will be a little closer for the board to consider where we're at.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to do this?
So moved.
I have a motion, second, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now, if you'll look on page 14, we have, these are pass-throughs. Do I hear a motion to approve the budget amendments?
Motion to approve.
Motion, do I hear a second? Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Appointments, page 15 and 16. If you will look on page 15, please. District 3 has an appointment for the Redevelopment and Housing Authority. Dorinda Hood, term expires 11/30/2018.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to appoint Mary Beth Allen as a member of that board.
Need a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Social Services Board, Charles Bennett resigned. Term expires 6/30/2020. Ms. Kilgore and I have not really had a chance to get together on this, and I would like to postpone this table it till next month.
You want the motion from the floor?
I make a motion to table it. I do need a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries. All right, we are going to go into closed session tonight. Let's see, does someone have the paper?
It's written on the agenda at the bottom, the code sections to go in.
Okay.
Are we going in under all three?
Mr.
What are we
Hatfield?
going in under?
We normally go in under all three.
All right.
Then I move that we go into closed session under section 2.2-3711A6, investing of public funds, A7, consultation with legal counsel, and A1, personnel.
Have a motion, do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yes, ma'am, I will call you from,
I make a motion to approve the resolution certifying that all
We need to
public
come out
business
first.
matters.
We need to come out.
Motion to come out of closed session.
That's right. I need a motion to come out of closed session.
Motion to come out of closed session,
Do I have
go
a
back
second?
into regular.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I make a motion to approve the resolution certifying that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting or discussed or heard by the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Castle,
Yes.
Supervisor Atkins,
Yes.
Supervisor Bates,
Yes.
Supervisor Rivers,
Yes.
Supervisor Schoolcraft,
Yes.
Supervisor Kilgore,
Yes.
Supervisor, or Vice Chairman Robbins.
Yes. Okay. County Administrator's report.
Have a couple of items just to update everybody. One thing that, dealing with Ballard has established a Wise County Visioning Committee that will make a recommendation to their board of directors on what should happen in Wise County in the future with Ballard concerning the 3 hospitals. And I have been asked to be on that committee to represent the Board of Supervisors. In addition to that, John Schoolcraft has been asked to be on that committee to represent the Lonesome Pine Hospital. So we will actually have 2 members on that committee to make a recommendation to Ballard. So that's a step in the right direction on where we're going to go with the county hospitals. Brian Phelan has accepted the job as the Assistant Economic Development Director and will start on April 1st. For you all's information, Greg Mullins and I have started meeting, and we are going to meet on a monthly basis to make sure that we have good coordination between the school board and the Board of Supervisors, and in hopes of looking at ways we can work together to save costs in the future and help with future budgets. The last thing I've got is the slide in Crackers Neck that most of you all are aware of is fairly stable at this point. You approved the resolution to
declare the emergency, and we're gonna be discussing with staff about when we can remove that emergency declaration, at which point we'll get a consensus from the board and then probably ratify next month. That's all I've got. Oh, I do have one. I wanted to thank the board for their support during the death of my mother-in-law, the time that you had given me to take and be with my wife and her family, and the flowers that you sent. And I just wanted to thank everybody.
You're welcome. County Attorney's report?
No report.
No report. Board comments? J.H.?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few comments. First of all, I just want to express my condolences and prayers for the families of the two young people that lost their life near Big Stone Gap this weekend. Sad situation for all involved, and just pray for all of them. I passed out what is known as a grazing stick. Our farmers will probably realize what it is, but I'm a member of the Black Diamond RC&D, which this board supports. And one of the things that we do is support agriculture, and this is, as I say, a grazing stick that was produced by our organization, provided to local farmers. There's been some seminars put on for agriculture through the RC&D, so I shared it with each of our board members. I know Robbie recognizes it.
I recognize back there.
It's got a lot of valuable information, and I'm sure that if our farmers out there need one of these sticks, that we can make arrangements to make that happen. Just like to say thank you to Chuck Smith for the good report that he gave. I guess I don't know how to say this because I don't feel like I should apologize, but I feel sad and disappointed on how we conducted business tonight on setting a public hearing for a tax rate. As one member of this board, it was so obvious to me that we were unprepared. Just because we've done it one way for the history doesn't mean we have to do it that way along, but to sit here and not know what's even been thought about or proposed, it seems like the driving force behind where we started tonight was the Davenport report that we needed 5 cents in real estate tax. And one of my comments earlier was the real estate tax doesn't make it equal to all of our citizens because only 2/3 of them pay real estate tax. So I just, other than it is just a public hearing, citizens, it doesn't mean that this is where we're headed. I, as one individual board member, hope. The last issue that I want to bring up is subdivisions, and I've talked about this in the past. I have one immediate concern. There's a subdivision in my district that has a road called the Rise. And this is probably the 3rd time that I've had citizens within the last several years, 4 or 5 years, to request something to be done to the road. And up to this point, we haven't been able to do anything. There's probably 4 homes over $200,000, maybe over $250,000 in that small subdivision. One of them, I think, is up for sale. They're trying to sell. With the road leading to that, we potentially will lose revenue from real estate tax as a county. I'm asking that we, Madam Attorney, look at who owns that road, who established that subdivision. Is there anything that we can do as a county to provide some type of service that will improve the road in that area? Now, as I mentioned, this is not the first time that I've brought this up. We've got a subdivision right here in Wise that I've had calls about within the last year. And it seems like we can't get these taken into the state system for probably multiple reasons. And I not only ask us to look at the situations we have ongoing right now, but I'm asking that we look at the future. When we build subdivisions, or when our developers build subdivisions, let's establish a policy or do a follow-up or something so that these roads in a timely manner get taken into the state system, or if they don't, that all of the citizens that live in that subdivision know that we communicate with them up front, that it's not going to be a state-maintained road, and they know what they're getting into before they buy property and build a house. So that's my concerns on subdivisions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Mr. Schoolcraft?
Yes, I certainly agree, J.H., with you in extending condolences to the families of these two young people who passed away this weekend down our way. Also look at folks needing some gravel or road repair, and thank you for patience, because the recent flooding has left us kind of overwhelmed. The other thing, I'd like to congratulate our local schools for not only sports activities, but activities in forensics and one-act play and that sort of thing. We are setting an example for the rest of the state with some of the things we're doing here, and I certainly appreciate the students and coaches that are involved in that. Thank you.
Mr. Castle?
I don't have anything. Well, I do have. I don't have any apology for what we happened to do here tonight, because we had to set a rate. We had to come up with a. I don't have the history about what you've done in the past to set a rate for tax rate to increase. I don't have any apology for doing anything what I've done tonight, because it gets to, you don't kick the can down the road, it gets it to the point where we can discuss what the tax rate is. So I don't have any problem. I don't have any apology to make, and that's all I have to say.
Mr. Bates?
Talking about subdivisions, out here at Wise, Bear Creek, you know, I have a lot of residents out there keep asking me, you know, every week somebody says something, even last week, and it's finally I just called VDOT, and VDOT said that the reason they can't take that in, because they got regulations about the site, the distance of sight when it coming out, you know, that there's not enough sight for cars, that they won't go in and take a site.
Elam Farm.
Huh?
The Elam Farm, yeah.
I don't know if it was.
Bear Creek, yeah.
Bear Creek, yeah. But that's the big reason right now, that's why they won't take it, because of the site that gives them liability. Collisions and wrecks and stuff. What'd she say?
Mr. Atkins?
No, wait, no, I was gonna say.
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
And congratulations to the Central Wise Warriors for state championship.
Amen to all, yes, I agree with
Mr. Atkins?
that. Nothing.
Okay. Does Dana have anything to say?
No, thank you for letting me join you by telephone.
You're welcome, Mrs. Kilgore.
I know there's a problem, and you feel that there's a problem with the way we set the public hearing, but we've always raised everything the same amount, and right now I didn't think that we needed to raise everything the same amount. Each individual item needs to be looked at, and when we set the tax rate, we still need to look at each individual item, so I have no apology for that. Also, I had a lady call me today about a leash law. I'm sure she called Karen, and I told her that I would bring it up, and I told her that we were a rural county, and rural counties are just not the same as she was from Ohio, and I told her that in rural counties, it's just not the same as it is in an urban area. So, and that we had this before us before. So before I hung up, I had to promise her that I would bring this up tonight, so I'm bringing it up. And another thing that I would add about the presentation tonight and the money tonight that we're looking at, we voted for the schools, we passed the rules, now we got to pay the debt. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to?
Second?
Okay.
We are adjourned.